So the City of London Corporation is the corporation that runs the City of London. And by that I just mean the financial district of London, the square mile. So we're going to talk about that quite a bit and about democracy. Where the City of London is a big issue because there's a very strong boundary around the outside of it. We're going to walk over that boundary, over London Bridge, and we're going to see the emblem, their mascot, the City of London's dragon. It has this dragon creature. We'll see that on London Bridge. So a question I want you to consider really is, who is part of the City of London and who is locked out of it really? So I thought I'd just stop briefly here to talk a bit more about some things that are hidden in the history of the City of London. Because in Borough Market, you saw a lot of merchants. And when the City of London, there were lots of merchants too. But we actually probably wouldn't know what these merchants traded to get so rich if it wasn't for a particular aspect of British history, which is to do with the slave trade. The reason is that in the UK, when slavery was abolished, there were huge compensation payments made to slave owners and slave traders, which is just horrific really in terms of the injustice of who should have got compensated. So another aspect of this is that actually the amount of money was so large that it was only paid off, the interest was only paid off in 2015. So it's very significant. You saw people selling fish. You know what people are selling. We're now in the City of London where it's not as clear what anybody's selling or doing. So fishmongers are one of the medieval guilds that make up the City of London Corporation. And that's really the foundation of this organisation. It's the very old trading guilds. And this will apply to other financial centres actually, particularly like in Switzerland, you'll find similar structures underneath it all. And the City of London claims to be the world's oldest continuous municipal democracy, which is quite a claim really, the oldest. I mean, it's a bit specific, municipal democracy, meaning like a local municipality, which is their local municipality, the City of London. And I genuinely think at some time period they probably were relatively democratic compared to what else was going on, you know, so sometimes they were. So I'll tell you a little bit about the guilds. So there are lots of them, over 100 guilds. We're outside the Fishmongers Guild, and they were originally a way for people that traded fish to come together as like a kind of mini, I'm sure you know what a trade guild is really, a kind of mini, I mean, Adam Smith called them monopolies, mini monopolies really actually, he didn't really like them. But they then were the only ones that could trade that thing in London. And to some extent, they will have links with the fishing trade, but they'll be mostly people that work in finance that are members now. They claim to be a democracy, but in London, well, in the UK, in England, there was also a really huge peasants' rebellion led by someone called Wat Tyler, and this was in the 14th century. And he marched into London with, people say, 50,000 peasants, which is a lot to organise. And he met the king, who said, go and talk to the Lord Mayor of the City of London Corporation, who is the head honcho of the City of London Corporation. So this peasant leader, Wat Tyler, marched into the City of London and met the Lord Mayor, who was a member of the Fishmongers Guild. And what ended up happening was the peasant leader got stabbed, basically, by the Lord Mayor and was killed. And the City of London have mixed stories about it. They say there was a favour to the king, perhaps stabbing to death the peasant leader. And actually the original dagger used is reputedly in Fishmongers Hall. But anyway, that's just a question about democracy, which we will come back to. We're going to get on to another stop, who the Lord Mayor is, because there's a Lord Mayor of the City of London Corporation. The stop will go to his house, the Lord Mayor of the City of London. I used to see them as something quite distinct from the state, and people will often tell you they're very separate. And there are stories like, for example, that when the king enters the City of London, they have to wait at the boundary and ask permission to enter. But my view has changed. My view is that shows that they're very tightly connected to the monarchy, because you have to be quite good friends to have that kind of ritual, really. So I think it shows, my view is that the City of London and our democracy are very connected, actually, as our Crown and King are. And you can see that through history, through all of the big companies like the East India Company, the Bank of England. They're all founded as mixtures of public and private, really. So I think this tour and the City of London Corporation is quite a good case study of how democracy operates or doesn't operate in lots of institutions. And we're outside the house, the Mansion House, the house of the Lord Mayor of the City of London, who is not Sadiq Khan, that's the Mayor of London. This is the Lord Mayor of the City of London Corporation. So basically, to get elected to be Lord Mayor, there's first step for anyone really to get elected in any kind of election. So they have elections like other local councils, like other local municipalities, but you must be a freeman to stand. So to be a freeman, you must be granted freeman status of the City of London. And other cities used to have this too. Now, there's two ways in. They do occasionally, well no, quite often, every year they'll make people freemen who've done really good things, like won an Olympic medal or something. But you can also apply. But there's a sort of another stage though to the freeman, which is becoming of the cloth, liveried. So you get a red cloak and you're a member of one of the trading guilds. So like the fishmongers. So you've got that, you've got a freeman status. Now to be on the council, you get elected by people. It's just there aren't many people in the City of London. So 3/4 of the votes go to businesses. So if you work somewhere like Bloomberg, which is there, Bloomberg will be allocated a share of votes based on how many employees they have, and then they vote. Those the people. So that's and different businesses do it differently how they allocate their votes. So that's so far normal-ish, because then you have councillors. Then you have another level, which is the Court of Aldermen. Then there's another level. Every year, sheriffs are elected. Once you've been sheriff, you are then eligible to be Lord Mayor of the City of London. Now, as there are only 2 sheriffs elected every year at midsummer, the choice is quite limited, basically, isn't it? And in fact, all those 3 have all been Lord Mayor, basically. And then, to be Lord Mayor, there's 2 processes. One is the Court of Aldermen choose some names, and then there's a dinner with all of the heads of all of the trade guilds, who then vote. So there we go, democracy in action. There have been some women, but only 2. And because the mayor's office has been going for 800 years, that's a very low percentage. And it's also just quite interesting because they're kind of normally on sabbatical from their job for a year, but they admit, one of them's written a memoir and he admits that he basically has all of his colleagues from PwC around for meetings here. And they do also, it says they have the same status as a member of our cabinet office. But you would question whether status is the same as power, and I don't know. It means that they're invited on trade envoys. So any sort of major trade envoy that the Prime Minister has, there will be the Lord Mayor will probably be lurking around in the background somewhere. And you might say they're just a representative of business and they represent finance, but then, you know, the other industries don't have a representative with them. You can see there's a city police van there. So they have their own police force, which historically was different and they had their own laws. Today there's only one rule of law in theory in the United Kingdom, but they still have different police. So the City of London police have different uniforms and different vans to the London Met Police. And the one thing that is different though is they have a particular remit to control financial crime, which you may say is a bit of a conflict of interest given that they're in the financial centre. So somebody said HSBC, we could see it, maybe you could see the sign in Canary Wharf.
So that's a British bank called the Hong Kong Shanghai Banking Corporation, formed really on the profits of the opium trade. And Britain had to go to war to enable that trade to take place. So we had the Opium Wars. In London, there were sort of two stock exchanges that emerged, and they went on to get this very grand building opened by the Queen. And people said it's a really nice building. It's such a nice building, the Victorians thought it was vulgar to have people trade in there. So a lot of the actual trading took place in little coffee houses, which is this other thing about London, where there's the official thing you see, and there's the actual place where the trading takes place in these little coffee houses. And the London Stock Exchange was formed from some traders that actually were too rowdy even for that, and they got expelled from this exchange and founded the London Stock Exchange in another coffee house. We're at the City of London Corporation's headquarters. We're standing on top of something important, which you can see the pavings in a sort of circle. That's because underneath here is something circular that's really old. Anyone guess what it is?
Roman theatre?
Yeah, a Roman amphitheatre, kind of a circus, yeah. So it really is old, this part of London. And I thought here I'd just return to this question about the boundaries, really. Because the City of London Corporation, whose headquarters is here, officially runs the square mile, but really the impacts of the City of London Corporation are much, much wider than that, really. And I think a few things I haven't told you really is they are in between being public and private. So they get some money from the government, like other local governments do, to do things like street cleaning. But they also have a huge amount of inherited wealth, which is their city cash fund, which we don't know how much is in it because it's not public, it's private. So you can't submit a freedom of information request because it's private, basically. Something else you might like to know about them is they have something called a person whose role is called the Remembrancer. And he is somebody who is able to sit in the House of Commons in Parliament, and his official role is to remind politicians of the City of London in case they forgot. And it's also just worth remembering that they came before Parliament, so they were here and then we got Parliament. And I don't know what your reflections are on this. For me, it's not just the tax that's being avoided, it's the legitimacy of some of the tax that's being made. So in the past, we were able to earn money from the slave trade, from the East Indian trade, from the opium trade. Today, I think there are still quite big questions about how the UK and other European countries, and potentially Scandinavian countries too, are actually earning their wealth. And it's not just about getting the tax back, it's about questioning some of the rules that mean actually that some countries seem to have a lot of privileges in terms of international trade. And I'm not sure if you really tried to tax his money, you might find some of the money doesn't even exist, if that makes sense. I would say what shifted is that the big companies that used to operate from here, like a lot of the big companies listed on the old Royal Exchanges, were very, very, very tied up with the British state, and the state controlled them to some extent. That, I believe, has changed, and I believe now the transnational corporations that come to the City of London have more power than the city and our British state. And I think that's one of the things that we're seeing in the UK, one of the reasons we're losing power. And it was linked to military power as well, because they all had private armies. So how powerful is the City of London? They do have things like a particular committee where their Lord Mayor will sit on it, and so will the heads of most of the banks in the city. So it does have some particular power bases like that. It has the role of the Remembrancer, who is a barrister, and they have lots of old money and stuff, so it has all that. But it also, by the way, just has people who are just grannies playing bridge. Like if you go into some of these trade guilds, you might just find a group of old people playing cards.